This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Warning. This episode contains descriptions of medical procedures that may be distressing to some listeners. I'm Georgia, and welcome to Finding Hope, the podcast to get your day started right. Each episode, we will swap out the depressing daily news headlines for a remarkable story of hope that will put your faith back in humanity and hopefully inspire you to look for the good in your own life. Episode 1. Merryl Mackenzie. I'm sure most of us have been subjected to some form of surgical procedure at least once in our lives, whether it's a wisdom teeth removal, a broken bone, or getting your appendix out. Although it can be a little daunting, surgery in Australia is generally pretty straightforward. We are blessed with good hospitals, medicine, and healthcare. But venture outside our borders and that reality becomes less and less common. Billions of people around the world live with illnesses, injuries, and deformities that are completely reversible, if only they had access to a simple surgery. But they don't, and so they remain forgotten. However, just as surely as there is injustice and poverty in the world, there are always helpers, people turning the tide of health inequality and providing life-changing surgeries to people who need it most. This is a story of poverty and immense heartbreak, but it's also a story of incredible hope and compassion, and a reminder for us all that helping one person, just one, can be life-changing. This is the story of life-saving theatre nurse Merryl Mackenzie. Tell me a bit about yourself.
My name's Merryl. I'm a mother and grandmother. I'm a nurse that's been working for over 40 years in a number of different states of Australia, but predominantly in the operating theatre. So that's my passion as a nurse, is working in theatre.
One thing I've learnt pretty quickly chatting to Merryl is that she's pretty humble. She's not going to give herself accolades without prompting. Luckily, that's what I'm here for. Throwback to 15 years ago, Merryl was busy saving lives in an operating theatre here in Australia, but she had sights set beyond our borders.
I was looking for something that I could work short-term or donate my time or work within just giving back to the community, giving back to the world as a theatre nurse.
That's when she found out about an organisation called Mercy Ships. For those of us who have never heard of Mercy Ships, what is the organisation about and what do they do?
So Mercy Ships basically is an organisation that provides free surgical healthcare to the world's forgotten poor. We follow the 2,000-year-old model of Jesus to bring hope and healing. A ship is our platform, and so by having a ship we can sail into a country, park there in the dock for 10 months. We have 5 operating theatres, 70-bed hospital, so everything happens within that contained area.
That's right, a literal floating hospital, right up Merryl's alley. But it's not like a hospital here where doctors drive home at the end of the day. The crew live and work on the ship, and most of them are volunteers, just like Merryl was when she started.
I first heard of Mercy Ships through a surgeon that I worked with. That was in August 2006, and in 2007 in January, I volunteered for the first time for 3 weeks in Ghana. I was a repeat offender, as I like to say, for each year from my holidays for about 5 years. And then in 2017, I went for 10 months. Mercy Ships was looking for a clinical supervisor, sort of leadership / management role in the operating theatre for 10 months. And I went for 10 months and I have stayed 4 years.
4 years. Merryl has been involved in thousands of surgeries during that time. The more I heard about the work that she did on Mercy Ships, the more in awe I was. But it also made me wonder, why? In the 21st century, organisations like Mercy Ships were needed at all?
Okay, really good question. Probably the simplest answer would be To refer to the World Health Organization Lancet report of a few years ago, 5 billion people worldwide lack access to safe, affordable and timely surgery. So that is basically 60% of the world's population. 2 out of 3 people cannot have access. So by using a ship, there's a high percentage of the world's population can actually get to a coastal area. So we predominantly work in West Africa currently and working to get that number of 5 billion people down.
So going back to the start of, you dock in a place and people would come and really, need these surgeries. What happens to these people when they can't get the surgery? Like what is happening to them in community, in their homes?
I think probably the word that first comes to mind is that they are shunned, they are rejected. And so they often will have some sort of deformity, cleft lips that haven't been repaired, ladies that are leaking post-childbirth, so they're shunned by their family, people with tumours, kids that can't go to school because of their orthopaedic problems. So they're just growing up as children and as adults, just put to one side, rejected by their family and pretty much lost hope in humanity.
It's the heartbreaking, unjust reality of extreme poverty. Australia has the same prevalence of cleft lips, facial tumours, potential for childbirth complications as any other place in the world. It isn't about prevalence, it's about access. You simply don't see adults with cleft lips here in Australia because it's repaired as a baby or a toddler. Facial tumours are caught before they become noticeable. Childbirth complications are dealt with immediately. Mercy ships are standing in the gap in these countries. But still, 5 billion people. That number just keeps going around in my brain. It's just a hill that's too big to climb. And many people simply miss out. You obviously can't do everything. You've got a 10-month-ish window in any one place. So many people obviously have to miss out. How do you emotionally kind of deal with that yourself? Because I can imagine that would be a lot of weight on your shoulders.
It's not very easy to deal with because it is very hard. The need is so great. There is always people that we can't help, and that might be because we don't do the specialty or we have no ability to do the specialty that they need. So personally, the way I come back to deal with it is for the people that we can help, that's life-changing for them. And so on an individual basis, that's how I centre and come back to that. I've been able to help this person, and I'll give them the best that I can bring to help them in the situation that they're in and the need that they've got.
Merryl is right. Just focus on the one. So, let's meet a couple of people who Merryl has treated over the years.
So we do an orthopaedic program, making the lame to walk, helping the lame to walk, straightening legs. And Ulrich is about 16, and he'd suffered birth trauma to his knees and in muscle contractures. And it's very hard to explain how he walked, except to say that his feet faced forward, his knees faced backwards, and he was bent over at the knees and walked with 2 sticks. So he was probably about 18 inches off the ground, and he was about 16. Probably a more recent story was to do with a little baby whose name was Paul, whose mother brought him to the dock. We had just physically, the ship had only just arrived and we were still setting up, and his mother had obviously heard we were coming. And he was 3 months old, and he weighed around 2 kilos, which is very tiny for a 3-month-old baby. And he had a cleft lip and palate and was not feeding and was literally starving to death. And Mum bought him because he wouldn't stop crying, and she was very concerned. She'd been around all the local hospitals and hadn't been able to get help.
We'll find out the ends to Paul and Ulrich's stories a little later in the episode. Spoiler alert, get the tissues ready. But you can't get to the ending without first reading the rest of a book. Unless you're some kind of monster that reads the last pages of a book first. And we don't do that on this podcast. So, let's find out the rest of Merryl's story. All right, Merryl, paint me a picture. What does an operating theatre on a cruise ship look like?
Well, firstly, we'd say it's probably not a cruise ship, but that's okay.
Yeah, it might serve me well to remember that not every big boat is actually a cruise ship. It turns out the current ship that Merryl works on, the Africa Mercy, is actually a converted rail ferry.
So an operating theatre on the Africa Mercy looks very similar to an operating theatre in our hospitals at home here, only much, much more compact because space is premium. But we would have the same equipment, anaesthetic machine, trolley with equipment, same instruments. The difference is probably that I would have in the 6 operating theatres, I could have as many as 18 different nationalities working there. So the difference is in the people.
Are there challenges associated with that?
There are challenges associated with that. Naturally, language can be a challenge, an obvious challenge. The language of the ship is English, so we ask that everybody that comes can function in a professional capacity with English. But we just approach life in different ways in different cultures. So it can be challenging, very challenging at times. But I think the positive outweighs the challenges so much because it brings a richness to life. And each one of those volunteers is volunteering their time, has stepped away from their life in their home country, and they've come with a heart to serve. And so the challenges almost get put aside because people want to work and want to help and come with an attitude of I'm bringing the best of me to this surgery and we will all work together as a team for the best outcome for this patient.
I love that. How do you deal with such a high pressure, high stress situation? Because I can imagine it is very stressful and a lot of pressure all the time. You don't really get too much of a reprieve.
No. It is very high pressured, and clinically and professionally I've probably faced some of the biggest challenges in a 40-year career in theatre in the last 3 years on the ship, just with the type of procedures we've been doing and the severity of disease. We have a chaplaincy team on board. I think just like a village, we have we're like a village on water. And the chaplaincy team is a great place to go to process some of those the more difficult situations. We talk together a lot. We try and debrief again on some of the more difficult procedures or more difficult situations. I like to get out in nature, so where I can, to walk outside, whether that might be up and down on the dock or outside, up and down on the deck outside. So you sort of develop your coping mechanisms, if that's the way to say it.
I honestly cannot imagine a more stressful job than what Merryl does day in and day out. But, like every worthwhile venture, there's something that makes it all worth it. Something that she holds on to each and every day. And for Merryl, it's those first moments after surgery.
It depends a lot on the type of surgery that the person has had. So some of these patients that with their tumours that are facial tumours that might have been very, very big upper jaw or lower jaw tumours, initially they're all still bandaged up for quite a couple of days. So when those bandages come off, we usually have a hand mirror there that they can actually see themselves in. And the thing that strikes me is the hope that comes into their eyes and the look of sheer almost disbelief, joy. What is it going to look like? All of those emotions wrapped into seeing for the first time. And then usually it's also a little bit of is this really me? But often what I see is patients will put that mirror down, and then later on in the day when they think no one's looking, they'll get the mirror back and they'll just sit there looking and checking it all out, and there's this little smile right up to their eyes, sort of just going out, checking out what they look like. The other one is the mums and dads with their children, and often, we bring mums in a recovery, and mums and dads in a recovery area for the little ones when they're waking up. And for the mums to see that their child has no longer got a cleft lip, the joy on the mums' faces is just unbelievable. There are no words sometimes. There really aren't.
Well, if you haven't started crying already, reach for the tissue box now. Remember Paul, the baby with the cleft lip, 2 kilos at 3 months old?
They tracked with us through a number of months, right through probably for about 8.5 months, while he was feeding and putting on weight till he could gain enough weight to actually have his surgery. And in one of the last weeks before we were leaving that particular country, he'd become quite a little chubber, and he had a beautiful smile, and he was able to get his lip repaired, and the mum's joy was just overwhelming, because she literally had saved his life by bringing him to us.
And what of Ulrich, the 16-year-old who walked on all fours because his legs were damaged during birth?
He had 2 surgeries, one on each leg, to straighten that particular deformity out. And he stood up for the first time, and he was quite a tall 16-year-old, but he had no idea how tall he was because he'd spent all his life walking literally about 18 inches off the ground. And he presented the surgeon that did his surgery, he presented Dr. Frank with one of his walking sticks and says, "Here you go, I'm not going to need these anymore." And, you just, the emotion of is just, every day there's stories like that. And it takes a whole team. I'm in a privileged position working in an operating theatre and seeing and getting to know patients. The ship is a team of hospitality, reception, dining room, mariners. We have a school on board for our children. We have a little ship shop with a cafe, and all of those. We have everything that's in a village is there, and together as a team is how we achieve these results.
There's no denying that what Mercy Ships does is incredible. But there comes a time where the ship has to move on. It's a part of life. So what then?
The other aspect is our medical capacity building, where we run courses in local hospitals, we train and visit into local hospitals, we bring local surgeons and anaesthetists onto the ship to learn from our international crew. It's teaching a man to fish.
Yeah, because you can't be there forever, right? You have to leave at some point.
That's right. And you want to leave a country with better facilities and better knowledge than when you came.
Apart from her team, Merryl credits someone else, not only for her achievements, but for setting an example for her on how to live her life.
My faith is integral to who I am. God has journeyed with me through some very deep and dark circumstances, and his faithfulness is just has been there. There's many verses that are key to me. I love Micah. God calls us to act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly, and I try to model that. That is my undergirding of who I am.
Merryl, I ask this at the end of every interview. How are you different now? How has Mercy Ships changed you?
I have a very different perspective on how fortunate I am and my family is, and my community here in Australia. Living in community changes you. Because living on a ship is living in a small community. We can live very isolated and isolating lives at home here. It's life-changing in many different ways. We have a poster up on the theatre wall on the Africa Mercy saying, we want to be a place where we see and allow God to change lives. And the obvious one is that it's our patients that we're referring to. But I've seen God change lives of every volunteer that comes in many different ways, be it drawing closer to Him, be it becoming more aware of who they are as individuals and what they can bring, or be it having an understanding that there is so much need that we just don't see in normal life. And I just can't wait to get back there. I am impatient to get back to community and impatient to get back to really what I believe is a calling on my life.
Well, I am hopeful that you'll be able to get back soon, Merryl. I've no doubt. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It has been a genuine honour. I think the work you do is incredible and I think you're an amazing woman. So thank you.
Georgia, thank you.
That was the story of Merryl Mackenzie, a theatre nurse and clinical supervisor for Mercy Ships. Merryl will be undertaking a brand new role in just a couple of months as Operation Theatre Manager on a brand new ship called the Global Mercy. The ship is set to start operating in West Africa in 2022. To find out more about the incredible work of Mercy Ships, there's information in the show notes and a documentary series called The Surgery Ship, which is currently available in Australia on 7plus. If you or someone you know has a story of hope to share and you'd like to be interviewed for this podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment on the Finding Hope page at hopepodcasts.com.au. And if you liked this episode and you'd like to give a rate or review, that would be so appreciated. It helps other people find the podcast, especially in these early days. I'm Georgia, and thank you for listening to this episode of Finding Hope. I'll leave you with this verse, one of Merrill's favourites. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Micah chapter 6, verse 8. Catch you next time.
This is a Hope 1032 production. Thanks for listening.